you get a master's, you may or may not be doing research afterwards, right? There's a high probability you're not. So, so think about that. Graduate school full-time status is 9 credit hours versus 12 when you're an undergrad. You study a subject more, so that's why you only take 9 hours, right? It's not so that you can get another job, you know, you've got something else on the side. No, full-time is 9 credit hours because you're supposed to be studying the material in depth. Higher academic expectations. Your classes, you have fewer classes and they're smaller, fewer students, because now you are really concentrating in an area. Close interaction with the faculty, so you're taking it a little bit more serious because you are getting a graduate degree. And then in the physical biological sciences, you tend to be in the lab all the time. And I guess Dorothy can attest to that, right? Okay, why go to graduate school, right? You might say, well, why do I need to go? You may want to get a deeper understanding of a subject. If you were an engineering major, you may want to get a graduate degree in business, right? I know of somebody in mathematics who got a degree in history, a bachelor's, and said, I don't really want this, you know, I can't get a job with a history degree. I'm going back to graduate school and I'm getting a PhD in mathematics. And you can do that, you can switch fields. If you want to do that, this is the time to do that. Career change. You know, you want to conduct scholarly or scientific research. So maybe you're in your job, you say, I just don't like this. And I have a student right now who's working at a bank. He says, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life. I don't want to be a teller. I need to come back to graduate school. And he wants to come back and get a PhD in neuroscience. So something very different. Why also go to graduate school? Professional advancement or opportunities. And we mentioned here a key difference, doing the work versus directing the work. Usually when you've got a bachelor's, you go straight into industry, you're going to be doing a lot of the work. If you have a graduate degree, now you have other opportunities available. You can direct people, right? So you can be a head or the leader of a group. You're showing more education and more experience. Okay. Career questions. So these are some questions to ask yourself concerning graduate school. Which field do I wish to study? Right. So in other words, do you want to study engineering again, or maybe switch from civil to aerospace engineering, or from history to math, like we said? What degree do I need to work in this particular field that you're interested in? Okay. So like this student of mine said, neuroscience is what intrigues me. I need a PhD if I want to teach in academia. What are my chances of getting employment with this new degree? Do I have the time and commitment to attend graduate school for advanced study? Because it takes time, right? And so if you have a family with kids, you have to consider that too, because as a graduate student, you don't get paid a lot, right? So we're talking maybe anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000. $30,000 if you are a PhD student. Less than that if you're a master's, if you're lucky to get funding for your master's degree, or partial funding for your master's. But you do have to ask yourself this: do I have the time, the 2 years to get the master's, or the 5 years for the PhD? Right. So and again, I'm going through this a little bit fast because I'm running out of time. But feel free to ask questions. Okay. So to prepare for graduate school. So how many of you are undergraduates? Okay, just about everybody. Good. Okay. So you're an undergraduate right now. Say you're considering going to graduate school. Some ways to prepare: take advanced courses. And we mentioned here, these are usually the elective courses, right? So, take all the courses that you need for your degree. If you have any, and you're going to have some electives, take some advanced ones, because these are going to prepare you more for graduate school. And you might see those advanced courses when you get to graduate school that first year. Participate in summer research programs, or they're also called REUs, research experiences for undergrads. So, participate in summer programs here at the university. Here at the university in the summer, or somewhere else outside of the university. Conduct research during the academic year or during the summer. You may or may not get paid for the research, but try it out and see if it's something that you want to do. And graduate schools look a lot, they look for experience. Have you done any research? How do I know that if I accept you into my graduate program, you're going to like it? Because I'm going to be investing my money in you. Okay? So, participate. If you like a particular class, talk to the professor. Hey, can I do some research with you? And they might, I know immediately when students come to me, I say, look, I don't have any money. But is that okay? Well, yeah, that's fine. We'll start on something, all right, and maybe we can apply for, funds later. And we also have, research programs on campus, and I'll tell you where to find out more where you can get paid. Okay, but summer research programs, again, those can be here, UTP, or external. And I'll give you more information about that. And for the external ones, you can definitely get paid if you go somewhere else. Again, conduct research, network at conferences. So talk to faculty, talk to other students and find out whether they like the graduate program. Attend graduate school fairs. So at HESTEC, we have a big one here. And here are some other conferences also. Satellite Ship, I think that's coming up any minute now. Again, preparing for graduate school, investigate graduate schools, visit them if possible. And what I tend to tell students is that if you're interested in going to graduate school, then during your spring break, if possible, just go visit some of these schools in Texas. They're not too far away. Or if you're gonna visit your aunt in Colorado, go visit the University of Colorado, Boulder, Denver, and other places. Just walk over there. But get a feel for how big other schools are, because other schools are much bigger than ours. Okay. Again, investigating graduate programs. Find out if the degree that you're interested in, which is the master's or the PhD, find out if it's part of a program or part of a department. So many of you right now belong to departments. Right? You're getting a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics, a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry, so those are attached to departments. But there are other degrees that are interdisciplinary. And so, for example, Cornell has one in an applied math program. UTEP has a computational science program. It doesn't belong to a department, but it's part of a program. So you want to find out, what's good or bad about each of those. Again, investigating graduate programs. Definitely find out if the degree that you want is offered. Otherwise, don't go there. You got to go somewhere else. The variety of fields. So if you are, say, in applied math, you say, well, I want to study differential equations. Let's see if somebody is there, or optimization. Help me out with chemistry. There's organic and what else? Inorganic. That's all I know. Physical chemistry, biochemistry, analytical. Okay, good. So you've got all these different fields. So you want to make sure that those fields are represented in that department if you're interested in going there. Faculty reputation. Right? So these faculty will know what kind of work are they doing. Do I want to join up with them? The other thing, you're looking at graduate programs again. Where do you want to go in the country? If you like
or outside of the country.
Yeah.
Don't limit yourself. You can move.
So
sorry, I just want to say, because I'm Canadian, right? And one of the best experiences I had in my training was the ability, going through my academic career, to live in other places. I did part of my postdoctoral work in Australia, and I lived there for 2 years. And that was a fantastic experience, and I've become absolutely convinced that everybody should live outside of their own country for at least a year. It broadens your mind in amazing ways. And so one of the things I would encourage you to do is don't think small. You are valued. People really want you. You can really have the opportunity to go someplace that you do not expect, right? Don't just think, oh, well, I can't go, that's too big or whatever. No, you are wrong. You have that opportunity to make that transition.
And definitely, so what Dr. Fox is saying, don't limit yourself. So definitely go explore. Okay, and we've got, we've sent students to A&M, Iowa State. They're outside of the, out of the state. Another one, Sam, are you here? No. He's planning to apply to Illinois. So definitely, just consider the programs, but don't limit yourselves. And also in terms of investigating programs, look at the mentoring environment. Is there going to be professional development for me to develop? Okay, and so usually they'll pair up like faculty members with a couple of graduate students, and they'll mentor you. Is there anything like that where where you're planning to go? If you don't need a mentoring environment, maybe that's fine with you. But in many cases, you do need a mentoring environment. Even faculty, I still need mentoring. Graduate school retention. Look at the numbers. If you are, by that I mean how many students are getting the PhD and how many are not. Right. So if suppose say there were 10 students who came in 1 year. And then at the end of 5 years, say only 3 of them got a PhD. And the others say got a master's. All right, but the intention was for all 10 to get a PhD, then there's something wrong. So it could be the program, the curriculum, maybe other exams. I don't know. It could be, it's usually a number of factors. But look at the graduate student retention. How many are getting, how many of those who wanted a PhD are getting a PhD? okay? Also look at the number and track of minorities and women. So, and then this is important for all of us here. How many women are getting into graduate programs and how many of them are getting a PhD? Right? If there were 3 coming in, none of them got a PhD, that ought to tell you something, what is going on. And again, it could be a number of factors, but you want to investigate. The same thing with underrepresented minorities. There are many schools, and I told my students this because I'm just upfront. Across the nation, again, underrepresented minorities and females are being sought to go to graduate programs. It's very easy for a graduate school to say, come in, I like you. All right, because they use those numbers, they put a check mark. Great, we've got an underrepresented minority student. Great, we've got a disability student. Great, we have an African American. But how many of you are going to graduate with a PhD? You want them to mentor you throughout those years. Okay, so it's very important. And so when we send students out to graduate programs, I take a look at all this. I have colleagues. I know they're going to mentor the students. I said, I want this this student to get a PhD. Don't just accept them and then, hey, you're on your own. All right, so look, and ask those questions. Investigate them. So those are important. Average number of years to completion. PhD usually takes 5 years. It does depend on the discipline. In some areas, 7 years in computer science is average. So find out. Okay, see if you have that time. But find out again about the average. And again, you may complete it before, maybe a little bit afterwards. But if you don't have the time, then consider that and consider finding someone else. Okay, in graduate programs, the atmosphere. Consider the atmosphere, in that particular program, is it research intensive, collaborative work, or do students usually study alone? Okay, so you kind of have to look at yourself. There's not a right reason or a wrong reason, but it just depends on you. Do you want to go to a large school or a small school? Are you satisfied with a large department or a small department? Small is fine. Okay, and then there are others, of course, that are much bigger than that. But it just depends on you, on what you want.
Although if you want to do a PhD, you're very unlikely to find one in small institutions. Most of the PhD programs are in big universities. Not exclusively, but that's the trend.
Yeah, well, but even if there's even if the school is, I'm thinking like UT Austin, 50,000 students, but that includes undergraduates. So now you want to focus on graduate studies, and they have fewer and fewer. And I think the UT Austin math department has about 200 graduate students. So it's not you've got to look at various factors. Look at the facilities available. Take a look at the library, the computers. If you're going to be working, if you're a computer scientist, that's going to be very important to you. Or even if you take computational chemistry, lab equipment. What facilities are there? Are they state of the art? You don't want something too old because you'd say, well, gosh, when I move out of here, I'm not going to be working with this equipment, right? So ask about that and see them, if it's possible. Ask about the jobs obtained by graduates. Many of them would tell you, oh, half of our graduates go to industry, some others go to academia, to university. But if there are more jobs, maybe many, an extreme number of graduates are going into industry and not academia, you may want to ask, well, why? Does the program prepare them more for an industry job than academia? I don't know. So whenever there are, these discrepancies, ask. And then this is a huge one. Visit with graduate students. They will tell you the scoop. Just like your buddies, right? Right now you find out, who should I take this class from? Right? Who should I avoid? Okay? Same thing here. Ask the graduate students, what do you think about this graduate program? Do you like it? Do you think it's preparing you? And they might say, well, look, I hardly ever get to see my advisor. I see him maybe once a month or once a semester because I have to work with his students, a postdoc. Maybe that's a good thing. So just ask. And I know most of you are undergraduates, so that's why talk to the graduate students and find out, and you'll learn what kind of questions to ask. Okay, another thing about investigating graduate programs, ask about financial aid. And we mentioned that a bit already. Right? Usually provided to PhD candidates, but ask if you're pursuing a master's. Another type of aid is assistantships or fellowships. So there is what is called a TA, teaching assistantship. They pay you to teach classes or to grade exams. And it depends on the school. Or you might get a research assistantship, an RA. You conduct research with a faculty member, and they pay you for that. So that's how you support, paying for your apartment, buying food, etc. And then there are fellowships. These are like scholarships. Did you pay back scholarships? No, right? So that's like money for you to spend. Again, to spend on your housing, your books, etc. Okay, so basically these are the common three types of things. And then your course of study. So ask again the number of years to complete coursework. For a PhD, usually like the 2 or 3 years you take classes. And then after that you start conducting research. But it depends on the program. You may conduct research after your second year, or maybe even the first year they might say, here's your faculty mentor. Let's start getting your feet wet and doing research. So it all depends. But you still have to take some, you still have a few years to do some coursework. And amount of coursework, expected period to begin research. So this is what you mentioned, is that at the beginning of my 3rd year, or as soon as I step on, on the campus. And then the last one, the preliminary exam. So if you are in a PhD program, it's pretty typical to take what are called qualifying exams, either after your 1st year or after your 2nd year of graduate school. And they want to know whether you've mastered the material that you've just learned. Sometimes the exams are oral, so you'll get up here and they ask you a question and you explain it. There'll be a board there too, so you can write some things, so they'll be written like in an exam. And again, you want to find out when do you take them. If you don't pass the preliminary exams, you may not be able to get a PhD at that in that department. So this is really, really critical. These are important questions. So when do I take them? Is it after the 1st or after the 2nd year? If I fail them the 1st time, do I get a 2nd chance? Right? And some programs do allow that, but I don't know about all the schools, so you really have to ask about certain schools. Some schools don't even give qualifying exams, right? And other departments do. So you've got to find out what that. But definitely ask, what if I don't pass it? And of course, you don't want to put yourself in that situation, but just find out. Okay, or talk to the graduate students. Okay, so now let's talk about, let me ask you, any questions so far? No? Okay. All right, so the graduate school application. So we had this session now because graduate school applications are typically due like anywhere between like January 2nd and late February, maybe March. March is kind of extending it already. But when I say January 2nd, I mean like right after New Year's Day. Because I've had to write letters of recommendation that are due January 2nd. Okay, so those are typical, starting deadlines. So if you're considering applying, if you're considering going to graduate school next fall, right now is the time to apply. The application consists of your educational background, where you went to school, demographics, where, GPA, that kind of stuff. Let me go back to this in a minute. They'll ask you for letters of recommendation, about 3 or 4, and I mentioned here the word strong, especially if you're considering going to a PhD program. Ask the faculty member, can you write, don't just ask, can you write a letter of recommendation for me? Because I'll say, yeah, sure I can. Can you write a strong letter of recommendation for me? I say, oh, well, wait a minute. Okay, let me think about it. Did you ever attend, my class? How did you do in the class? Etc. So you want to get strong letters of recommendation from either faculty, or if you conducted research with a faculty member, get a letter from them. If you went to an internship in the summer, some of you engineers tend to go work for companies over the summer, get a letter from them if you did good work. If you went to a summer research program, get a letter from those folks. They'll be at other institutions, that's okay. But they'll evaluate you on how well you can do research, and that's what the committee wants to see.
General guideline. If you walk into a faculty member's office and they don't know your name, don't ask them for a letter of recommendation. It should be, you walk into their office and it's like, hi, Mary, right? If they don't have that level of familiarity with you, it's a bit of a risk, honestly. Because there are some faculty members who will write the form letter. You guys don't know who they are. I know who they are because I read applications. I can't tell you who they are, but but it's like, okay, here are the form letters from this, because I get in applications for things. It's like, okay, well this particular faculty member, oh, he really likes this one because he didn't write her the form letter. Everybody else got the form letter. You don't want to be the person getting the form letter. How do you ensure that? You've got to know the faculty member really pretty well.
I mean, they've got to know you too, right? So in your classes, ask questions, go to office hours. But if possible, also conduct research with somebody. Okay? Resume, so with that, and again, Career Services has resume workshops. You need your transcripts. And then they'll ask you also for a statement of purpose, or, you know, like a 1 or 2 page statement. They'll ask you,
Why do you want to do this to yourself?
what do you want to go to graduate school? Okay, what is it that you want to study? And maybe you don't have an idea. You know, when I went to graduate school, I just said, you know, applied mathematics, I knew I didn't want pure. That was it. You know, and I described why, etc. But there's so many subdisciplines of applied math. But I ended up going to a school that had various interests. I said, I'm not too sure where I want to focus in. But describe, you know, why you would like to study. You know, go to graduate school in a particular discipline, describe your interests, address any academic issues, and I'll talk about this some more in a minute. So here, make this, make this stand out. And I was just reading, I had 2 students send me their statement of purpose about 2 weeks ago. I read through one of them. I said, this is really dry. I mean, this is not catching my attention because all the other 200 students who are applying are going to have very similar essays like yours. I said, change it a bit. Please tell me something about yourself. Are you the first, you know, to go to college? Yes, put that in there. How about a graduate degree? Will you be the first one? Yes, put that in there. Put other things that make you stand out. Okay? You know, maybe you were working in school, you know, 12 hours, 20 hours. You had a family during school, and hey, look at my GPA. It's 3.5. Right? Make it stand out and show you, you know, you worked hard. But don't falsify information, okay? So definitely do not do that.
And spell.
Yes.
Because you get a stack of applications, right? You've got 5 slots, you've got 50 applications. What are you going to do to bring down the stack? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to look through and you're going to look for stupid mistakes. So if you have apostrophes, if you don't know how to use an apostrophe, learn. Because people, you will knock yourself out with stupid spelling mistakes in your personal statement.
Yeah, that's very true.
Do not give them a reason, an easy reason to cut you. Your first job is survive the cut.
Yes. That's right.
After that, it's kind of up to, you know, other things come into play. But the first thing, survive the cut.
Well put. Yeah. Okay, this is not too important, so I'm going to skip that one for now, but let me go back to the GRE and GRE subject test. So, definitely PhD programs require a GRE. What is that? Graduate record exam. How many of you have heard of the GRE? Okay, so it's very similar to like the SAT. When you're an undergraduate, when you're a high school student, you take the SAT to get into college. When you're an undergraduate, you take the GRE to get into graduate school. Okay, very similar exams. And there's a GRE subject test that is in your discipline, like in biology or math. Depending on the school, this one is usually not required except maybe by elite schools, like the Princetons and your Harvards. But again, it depends on the program. So, you've got to investigate the program. But this is very, very, very common. And you've got to prepare for it. Just like you prepared for the SAT, or maybe you didn't, definitely prepare for this. At least look at the instructions, find out what's going to be in there. Right? And UTPA, our library has resources. A website that I'm going to show you has resources on that too.
I have a question. Yes. If you took like the MCAT, would they get the scores for that test, or you need the GRE?
No, it's irrelevant.
But the MCAT is for
Medical
Yes, for
school.
medical school, but I was wondering if they could also look at those scores.
Why? It's
Well,
not medical school.
Well, I
Not
know,
the
but
same thing.
when I-
Don't care.
When I was doing the application, it's saying like, have you taken the GRE? And if so, when? So I'm maybe like, do they ask for the
like Dr. Paul said, medical schools would ask for the MCAT. Other schools, like the graduate programs, will ask for the GRE.
So with the medicals attached to them, okay? So at, say UT Medical Branch. There's a medical school at UT Medical Branch, hence the name. There's also a straight up PhD research program there, okay? So that may be some of the reason why there's overlap in programs like that. But if you're applying for the graduate school, they're not really going to care about your MCAT scores. They're not going to look for them. They're not going to be asking them. It's not going to be required. As far as I know of no graduate school that cares about your MCAT
Yes.
or DAT or any of those health professions related tests.
Okay, so we mentioned, that statement of purpose that you have to write. And here's just a point. So notice, when there are problems or uncertainties in your file, and when I was reading it, that in your life, which also pertains to your life, okay, address it in the statement of purpose or letters of recommendation. And we mentioned here, do not leave the committee guessing. So, for example, you've got your transcript, and committees do look at transcripts. Let's say your fall semester, you averaged, maybe you flunked out of your courses, so you got 2 C's, but all the other semesters, you got A's, right? But especially if flunking out is more serious or getting F's. Address that in your statement of purpose. What happened there? Because the committee's going to wonder, well, what happened in that semester? Is this going to repeat itself again when you're a graduate student of mine? So address it. Maybe something happened. There was maybe a death in the family. You were in the hospital. Maybe you had a child. When you had to work that particular semester because your dad lost his job. Address something like that. And that's what we mean here. Do not leave the committee guessing. But if you got C's throughout your semester, throughout your 4 years, that's a different story, right? And I said, this is a pattern. If you have to mention something about that, maybe address it. But especially if there are these, outliers out there, these peaks that are different from the rest, address that. Be realistic with your expectations, or in other words, be realistic where you're applying to. Okay, I had a student who told me he was applying to Berkeley, and I said, okay, all right, you're applying to Berkeley, which is it's a top school. That's perfectly fine. Just have other schools in mind also, right? If you don't get into Berkeley, maybe you got into Stanford or some other school, right? And I'm not saying not go for the stars, but be realistic, okay? Apply to others also. Make sure that you can apply to at least 2 where you know you can get in. Those are your backups. Choose schools, okay, we mentioned that. Okay, so maybe your career path is going to go, is going to ask you to go obtain a master's first before a PhD. And it all depends, it depends on various factors. So if you notice yourself that it might be difficult to get into a PhD program, then get a master's degree first. And then continue from there. Graduate school application requires a fee, usually about $50, depends on the program. Ask if the fee can be waived. Okay, so in other words, if you don't have to pay that fee. So some programs will do that. There's Project 1000. You submit 1 application with all the other things I had mentioned, okay, letters, transcripts, etc. You submit 1 application. That application gets sent to 7 graduate programs that you choose from the 70 universities that participate in Project 1000. Okay, and again, I'll tell you how to get access to that in a minute, but that just requires 1 application. The application fee is waived. If you are majoring in STEM or going into a STEM discipline for grad school, you apply, but if you are planning to go to graduate school in history, you cannot use this website. It's only if you're going into science, technology, engineering, or math. Restricted to U.S. citizens and permanent residents. Okay, GRE subject test, I'll go over this real quick. Again, you've got to take this exam in one of these specific disciplines. Again, required by some, not all. And some programs may place more emphasis on the GRE subject than the GRE. But this is more like an exception. So ask if you graduate, ask the VA to take the subject test, because you typically may not have to. Okay, I'll skip that one. Fellowship. So this is again like scholarships money. There's several fellowships here. I'll tell you where to look for these fellowships in a minute. Okay, but there are several. Notice, in engineering, Homeland Security, NIH, biology, physical sciences. These are open to any STEM discipline. I think so. This one and this one also. So there are several out there, right? And this is money that you have and you can carry with you. So if one graduate school for it, okay, the reason to get a fellowship, if you can, is suppose, let's just say UT Austin accepted you and Stanford accepted you, right? Both of them ask you to teach your first year. Let's just say that. Okay, they ask you to teach your first year, and you say, oh, I didn't really want to teach. I want to focus on my studies. If you have a fellowship, you tell Stanford, hey, I just got my fellowship. Can you relieve me from teaching? And maybe they'll say, hey, that's fine. Yeah, you don't have to teach your first year. You can concentrate on research or do something else, right? Why also would a fellowship, if I'm a graduate program director, and I see you coming in with a fellowship, right? Do I need?
You have money.
You have money, yeah. You have money.
How is this hard? You have money. I don't have to pay for you.
So you're free, right? So you are free to the graduate program. And so you can bargain with that graduate program and ask, can you give me this instead of that, etc. When I went to graduate school, I had a fellowship also. And I think it was paying, the graduate department was paying me a little bit more than my fellowship. My advisor said, take it, you're free, we'll give you more than what we had given you before. So I said, okay, that's great. Others, you might say, you know, why don't you use that money to go to conferences, or things like that. So you can always bargain. All right, so that's why it's good to have a fellowship. Okay, if you visit the school, let me see, I'll skip this. Okay, getting in the inside story. Okay, so you've applied already, what does the committee look at? So, there is a committee within the department composed of faculty members, just a few of them, and they look at applications. And so we want to figure out what is it that they consider. So they certainly look at letters of recommendation, grades and courses, any research experience, your statement of purpose, that essay you have to write, GREs, where you went to school and what you did. Right, so they look at all these different factors. And so here's something typical that usually happens. So how the committee chooses. So basically they've got like, you know, they've got a huge stack of paper, say 200 applications. They're going to separate the applications into 3 piles. Right? They determine this threshold. And notice what we mentioned here. There is a fuzzy threshold is determined from years of experience of working with students. They typically, their threshold tends to be the GRE. So they might say, for example, look, if we have students that have a GRE of say less than 800, they are an absolute no.
800 is out off, that's the old GRE. New GRE is like, goes up to I think 300, something like that.
Okay, I don't know.
Yeah. But in any case, yeah, the GRE just changed, so.
Yeah, about a year ago, I think.
Yeah.
So there's, you know, a certain GRE score. If you are below that GRE score, you will not be admitted. Okay, that is a stack no. Students with scores significantly below the threshold are not accepted. Okay, and that's because, you know, the program has noticed that if you have that low of a GRE, you are probably not going to make it to the program. There's a high chance, a high risk you're not going to make it. Okay, then there's the maybe pile. Notice what it says. Students with scores near that threshold are looked at with extra care. So now you're in this maybe. We might accept you. The yes pile, students with scores above the threshold are deemed equivalent. So all these students are the same. Right, so you've got this other pile, say 50 applications, all these students are considered the same. But you can't accept all 50 because you don't have money for all 50 students. So you've got to go more in depth into other factors that, you know, will give you acceptance. So that's typically what happens. So again, back to survival. You don't want to be in this pile. Yeah, you don't want to be in this pile. So that's why study for that GRE, work on that personal statement, etc. But the GRE makes a difference.
The GRE and also GPA. Usually for a lot of graduate programs, 3 is kind of where that fuzzy threshold is. If you're above 3, you're in the okay pile. And if you're around 3, you're in the maybe pile. If you're below 3, you're in the no pile, probably.
Okay, so we mentioned here, so again, the clause read by some faculty members. Some tips: complete the application early, update application as new information becomes available. So for example, if you did research, you got a paper out, it got published, update, just send an email, hey, my paper just got published. That can make a big difference. Okay. Here, one person make a difference in admission, very true. So it could be that there's one faculty member in there who knows your faculty member and says, oh, he's really sent us good students in the past. I see, you know, this was probably going to be the same, or I've conducted work with that faculty member, research work. You know, his output is excellent. He prepares his students well. You know, I want that student. So one person can make all the difference. Or maybe if you went to a summer research program, and that faculty member happens to lie in the group, you know, they might say, yep, you know, Juan here really focused on, you know, focused his research well. He did an excellent, you know, presentation. He knows his material well. You know, I want him. So again, one person can make a difference. So don't never burn any bridges. Getting in the inside story. Okay, so what the committee's thinking. So remember we said there are like, you know, 50 yes applications. Not all of them can get in because the committee has to consider how many spots are there, because you got to provide funding to these students. So they're going to be, you know, assistantships or fellowships. Are you qualified? But do you also fit? So is what you want to study in our area. Right? Can we provide for you what you need? Do you have a commitment, persistence, diversity, class size? Are you free? Remember we mentioned this? Do you come with a fellowship? Yes.
3 more minutes more or less.
Oh, okay, well, I've got the graduate school real quick. Are you free? So if you come with a fellowship, that's awesome. If not, then you go back over here. Do I have to provide, I now have to provide funding for you? Do I know you? Or your advice? Okay. That's it. So, any
On
questions?
time, even starting late.
Okay, I now have, and we're gonna pass out some cards in a minute also. The graduate school here from UTPA also wants to talk to you about their master's program, and some PhDs.